George of the jungle, strong as he can be.
George, my home has gone up so much. I have all this equity in it, and yet I have a great interest rate on my mortgage. Is a home equity loan really the best way to tap the equity in my house, even in this rising interest rate market? Well, that's a great question, and that's what we're going to talk about in thecreditjungle.com today. This is George Anderson, and I'm going to maybe break this up into two parts and just kind of go over some pros and cons, and then teach you how to do what's called a blended rate calculation for your own situation. And obviously you can call me and we can run through a specific situation and do that. But what I wanted to do is just give an example here that right now in Utah, this is actually a very, very typical, if not conservative estimate. But you've got somebody here who had a house that, just a few years ago was probably worth $450,000. It's worth $750,000 now. And they have got an excellent 3.0% 30-year fixed rate loan, and they owe $400,000 on that. And, those rates have been gone for about 8 months now. Probably about 6 months. And there's a lot of people that are sitting there looking, I could consolidate debt, I could do some stuff. And they'll ask me, says, well, what do you think about doing a cash out refinance? Well, the disadvantage to doing a cash out refinance, and I'm just going to go through some pros and some cons, and then we're going to come back to the numbers on this. If you do a cash out refinance, and let's just say, in this example, we're going to just say that somebody's trying to get $100,000. Now with these numbers, you can get more than that, and we'll discuss that also, but we're just going to show getting $100,000. If you wanted to do that, you could do a refinance, and you could do what's called a cash out refinance if you're going to get more than $2,000 at the closing table from the proceeds of the loan. It's considered a cash out. And so we don't have any problem with loan to value. We can go up to 80% loan to value, which on this house, we could get a loan for up to $600,000. And that's fine, but we're only going to say we only want 100. So we're going to do it at $500,000. That loan to value is going to be about 67%. It's going to be not as much of an adjustment to the interest rate, but a cash out refinance transaction, you are going to have what's called a loan level pricing adjustment. And we've talked about this in other videos. You're going to have a loan level pricing adjustment because it's a refinance and because it's a cash out. Okay, so you're not going to get the best available rate. And right now we're just going to show a rate here of 5.5%. These rates have been bouncing all over the place, but that's just an indication of where we are. But that's obviously 2.5% higher than where you are right now. Well, what happens with this $400,000 that was at 3%? Well, it gets thrown out. The baby gets thrown out with the bathwater on it. So your cost of getting $100,000, okay, is significant because you've lost $400,000 at 3%, and now you've got $500,000 that you're going to owe at 5.5%. So that's the first disadvantage of a cash out refinance. The second one is that, let's just say that you wanted to borrow this money for maybe consolidating debt or doing something like that. And there's a lot of people, and I subscribe to a service that really pitches debt consolidation and everything else. The problem is that I see people get stuck in a cycle where as soon as they get themselves out of debt and consolidate everything into their mortgage, they just find it that much easier to go out and get in debt again. Okay, so the problem here is that if you're converting, taking maybe a vehicle loan, a recreational vehicle, just some other stuff, and you're lumping that all into your mortgage, yeah, it might actually bring your total payment down. But now you've taken debt that might have been on a schedule to get paid off in 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years, and now it's on a 30-year amortization. The reason that your payment is going down isn't so much because of the interest rate, it's because you've lengthened out the term. The longer you take to pay something back, over time you're actually going to be paying more interest in that. You're going to pay much less interest on a 15-year loan or a 10-year loan that's at 7% than you are on a 30-year loan that's at 5.5%. The total amount of interest matters, and you've got to take this into consideration. And then there again is a cap here of 80% loan to value, and you're going to have closing costs. Now these are basically just the one-time non-recurring fees. These are going to be your title fees, appraisal if you need one at 67% loan to value, you probably wouldn't need one. And then your lender fees. So just your one-time non-recurring fees, you're going to have some cost associated with that. So those are some of the negatives there. And I'm going to show you everybody just kind of goes, yeah, but what about the home equity line of credit? Aren't those based on an adjustable rate, and aren't rates going up? So we're going to make an assumption here, and then we're going to come back and finish these calculations. Yes, most home equity lines of credit are an adjustable rate. You can get some good, decent fixed rate loans. I just had a client that got a fixed rate loan that was for 5 years, and then it converts to an adjustable rate, and the rate was decent. The nice thing about the home equity line of credit is that the closing costs are probably about $500, but a lot of times it's just nothing. It's thrown onto the back end. And that rate is variable, and it's based on Wall Street Prime. As of the time that I'm speaking right now, the first week of June, Wall Street Prime's at 4%. Well, guess what? Fed's going to meet later this month. It's going to go to 4.5%, and the Fed's going to meet the end of July, and it's going to go to 5%. So if we take that and assume that we got a worst case scenario on there, let's take that your rate would be prime plus, that's what a variable rate is. It's going to be indexed to something along with a margin. Now, a lot of home equity lines of credit, you can get them exactly at prime or even sometimes below prime. But let's take a worst case scenario where it's prime plus 1%. And let's assume that the Fed does what they say they're going to do, and Wall Street Prime is going to go from 4 to 5% by the end of July. Well, then that means that the rate over here on this one is 6.0%. Okay? Is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, maybe, maybe not. We're going to just cut the conversation here. We're going to go into a part 2. And thanks for coming into thecreditjungle.com today. This is George Anderson. You can push button, get mortgage professional, and be happy to talk with you about your situation. And we'll be right back.